Welcome to our YouTube channel. We're so glad that you found us. Please enjoy this inspiring interview with Jeannie Zandi. She was interviewed by Reverend Anne Blanchard. If you would like some more information about Jeannie, please visit her website at jeanniezandi.com. For more information on our non-dual community and the free resources we provide, we invite you to visit our website at awakening-together.org. We hope you enjoy the satsang and hope to see you live in our sanctuary.
And welcome, Jeannie. It's wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. So I just tried to pull up Jeannie's bio, and I can't get it quickly. So what I'm going to say is that Jeannie runs an organization called Living is Love. She's a spiritual teacher with years and years of experience guiding those that are called and those that find themselves even without a call, but an experience that they can't quite come fully present to. And in reviewing interviews and writings of Jeannie, what I can say is that you have here a resource of someone who can just really bring clarity and light to what may seem confusing and obtuse. And I just invite everyone here to take advantage of that. I'm just super excited. And Jeannie, maybe I could just hand this to you. Any kind of thing you'd like to say initially? And we had talked about potentially having a little direct experience process here.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, everybody. Thanks for letting me crash your church. So I think what I would love to do is just start off with a few minutes of meditation and then some guided meditation. This is how I start all of my meetings that I do. So I thought I'd give you a little taste of that. So if you feel to, close your eyes. Some people find that the best. You can keep your eyes open if you like, but this is sort of inward directed. So let's just sit for a few minutes and then I'll just start murmuring to you. Have your eyes closed and you're resting there. I want to invite you to let your body soften. Take some nice, long, slow, deep breaths and just let the body sink into the seat below you, into the earth. I think the body gets to be off duty. For this little while, it gets to curl up and rest in being. And so noticing the rise and the fall of your breath and the sounds in your environment. Everything here, all these sensational bits call us to the moment. They're all happening right here, and they can be a nice anchor outside of the mind. Sound and feel, breath and ground. Just like you would float on a floaty in a swimming pool in the summer. Letting the moment have your weight. No jobs, nowhere to go, nothing to handle, nobody to be. You don't even have to be a spiritual one, just a breathing being, simple breathing being. Letting the thoughts float through if they come. And returning attention again and again to this noticing presence that you are and the bits that it notices. Slowing down, landing. And you might even on an out breath just let a sound, like a nice low sound, sort of vibrating your body. It can even be an or a purr. You might let your sense of yourself kind of turn from body to cloud of presence. Like, let yourself sit there as a cloud of presence. Noticing the vibration of life energy. Letting the boundary between body and atmosphere kind of soften and dissolve. Let your cells mingle with the atmosphere. Imagine yourself growing, filling the room as this presence, filling the building you're in, the town, the state, the continent. Let the planets float inside you. I call this being unincorporated. We can rest wide open. And noticing the aspect of us that is creaturely. The body is like a creature. It's like our pet. And so if your body feels to lie down, lie down. If your body feels tension, lay a hand or two on it. Heart and belly. The very first ground of compassion and kindness is us toward this creature that's been assigned us. And the more kind we are to this creature, the more settled and kind it can be as a vehicle toward others. And I love inviting us to open a window, a little window in our consciousness to the other beings who are on this call, like a gathering of basically sweethearts, sort of coming out of the closet as sweetie pies, resting here together as heart. Whatever our struggles, whatever our challenged moments, in essence, we've come here to love. We get to have mercy for ourselves for this human aspect that will never be perfect, will always be a little creaturely and limited. It's part of the design. So I would invite you to lay a hand on your body, or this is what I call the COVID hug. When we couldn't hug each other and we were online, we could hug ourselves and pretend we were hugging each other. And I like this online. It's like, just letting the body know in a way like, good dog. Yeah. And I think you can guess, for those of you who have never met me, that I am very much, I'm very passionate about embodiment, the embodiment of presence, living it, living love, bringing that into every little aspect of how we are walking our talk. So I'm going to hand it over to Anne because I think she's got some questions for me and we'll have fun. No,
All right.
thank you everyone for having me here.
Oh, thank you. That was wonderful.
Yay.
So, part of what feels like is the opportunity is to have people get to know you by way of either biography or experience, however you want to express that. But it seems like that's always kind of the first step into relating, is to kind of get a sense of someone. So I don't want to ask anything more specific than that. I would offer to you that would be the opportunity I feel. That excites me, to get to know you, and just ask if you'd like to have that be a question.
What would you like to know? Because there's so many aspects to this being, and I want to stay really close to just, what you're interested in. I could, I could tell you I like to ride my mountain bike, but that may not be what you're interested in.
Shauna likes that. Well, I don't want to say, I don't know, do we want to call it awakening experience, or your journey to where kind of the freedom that you experience now? I've heard in the interviews and what I've read that referred to as like a dark night. It sounded like many nights. Sounded like quite an extended period.
It'd be nice if it was just one night.
I know, right? I mean, or like a bad week or something. So I mean, that's what I feel most interested in is going from, because just for anyone who doesn't know, it's not like you were new to spirituality, and it wasn't like, from what I understand, you were new to inner work.
Yeah.
You weren't new to experiencing pain and letting it come through, and you had tools, and yet you were met with something that was quite big.
Yeah. I can talk about that if you like. And I think, each one of us who is opened, depending upon what seemed useful to us and how we view or how we look at this whole thing, we teach differently. And so I think it's interesting that much of my teaching, it's almost like I am what I could have used back in my struggle. I could have used this. That's how I have formed this. It's formed itself as a in a way, the medicine of presence, the medicine of love, of holiness. So I guess the best way to say it is that I found therapy, growth, that kind of stuff pretty young for my generation. I'm 62, and when I was 23, I discovered something called co-counseling, which some people know about, some people don't. But I was so excited about this because I could hold space for someone and they could hold space for me, and we could look into our, for lack of a better way of saying it, suboptimal behavior. Right? The places where we're a jerk or scared or whatever, limited. And I could dig down into the undigested emotion, pain, whatever, free it, and notice a new freedom in my life, a new capacity, a new confidence, whatever. So I did that from the time I was 23 until, for a lot of my life. I was doing stuff like that, therapy, all the stuff people do, Sufi dancing and kirtan and, all kinds of stuff. And I like to joke that my spiritual practice was more weeping than sitting, because I was so taken by this meeting undigested emotion and how much it would release bits of identity, things like this. So that's where I started out. And you can see that in my work, because my work is very much a wedding, a hybrid of a deep knowledge of the way that the human psyche works, and then how light comes into us and wants to live us, and the ways that undigested stuff in our embodiment can keep us from being as loud a megaphone for the holy as we might be, because we might be afraid or this or that, reactive, that kind of thing. So I'm tooling along thinking that kind of God's my pet and that life is good, and sing Sufi songs, feel holy, la la la. And I hit something, and I didn't call it anything at the time, but it was otherworldly. I thought I was the deep, dark, deep sea diver, that I could face anything, that I had faced anything, that I had like gone down and gone down and gone down, and now I'm so cool, I mean, in retrospect, when I see the humbling that was to take place after that, there's I think it's Beowulf. There's a monster that is in the story of Beowulf. There's a monster that's plaguing the village, and the hero comes and kills. The monster's name is Grendel, and the hero kills Grendel. right? And then there's some old person in the woods who says, yeah, you killed Grendel, but wahaha, the mother of Grendel. The mother of Grendel is down in this like pond or swamp, and no one ever sees the mother of Grendel. And so to me, the Dark Night that I experienced was kind of like exploring the mother of Grendel, the root of separation that lives in the human psyche and that is outpictured in our world. Any place that we are playing in black and white, we can see separation at work. And so without, belaboring the description of the process, I mean, basically when I found St. John of the Cross's Dark Night of the Soul, I alternately laughed and cried reading that book because no one knew what was wrong with me. I was like, one minute I was a light and I was helping people and then the next minute I was just like in agony. The world turned meaningless. Terror moved into my body. St. John says that your mind and your will are, it's almost like the mental knowing gets messed with until you're basically installed in the unknown. Your will goes flaccid and you become much more a follower of holy will than able to move in your own direction. All these kinds of changes. And this happened when I was pregnant with my daughter. And in the first few years of her young life, she was great company because she was simply a being. And I became allergic to conditioning. I spent a lot of time by myself. The culmination of that Dark Night, and I think a lot of people who carry trauma are attracted to my work because of how far I went down. I am very comfortable in all manner of realms of down. And the Dark Night of the Soul can sound a lot like trauma. Um, and there are some people who go through the Dark Night of the Soul and then they have to meet their trauma because the Dark Night of the Soul basically, it's like a dissolution of this structure of the self. And then you're washed into the sea and whatever chaos you haven't met inside, yeehaw, you get to meet it. So that whole process, every time my everyday mind tried to go to the future, I would be filled with terror and my mind would overwork, overwork, overwork. I was filled with such suffering at that process that it basically tutored me in not going into the future, not going into the past, not going into my mind. I was very pregnant at the time, and I would lay beside this little creek and watch the ripples in the water, watch the leaves, and all of my attention was on these simple building blocks of the moment, because the moment was my sanctuary. The moment outside of the mind was where the suffering abated. As soon as I went upstairs, whoo, diggity. So it was like this real, independent study in suffering because the heat was turned up, under my system. So that culminated one day. I can remember I was down by that creek and I could feel my mind gearing itself up to do another helping of, let's see if we can diagnose and solve you. And I could feel the machinery like this. And then this mindless, spacious presence sort of inserted in that space. What if I don't ever go back to listening to the mind? What if I don't go there anymore? Because I had had lots of practice of not, but it would rear up again. This was a moment of an invitation. What if you never go back there? What if you never listen to this thing again? What if it's no longer your guidepost, your master, your anything? That rose in me. And I could feel like there was like this yes in myself, like this yes to being no one, to going nowhere, to just living in the unknown. And then the mind screamed something like, You will be ill, you will be crazy, you will be alone, you will be dead without me. But it was too late. It already had lost power. And so, slowly over time, the whole orientation to living, to life, to mind, to presence just completely shifted into, I like calling it nobody going nowhere. It's this sense of just being all here in the aliveness of the present. Now I can't leave. I can't, my mind doesn't do that thing anymore. I mean, I can obviously add up a column of numbers and, play calendar. But it's as though this unknown presence is now the main event, the main reality. It used to be a spiritual reality I would visit, and it is now just simply what I am. I like to do the what is it, The Shining, when the little boy goes, Jeannie doesn't live here anymore. That's the short. Yeah. And I have a feeling, I've worked with a ton of people who've gone through the dark night of the soul, or what I call spiritual deconstruction. And we can think spirituality is like ascension, 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 light, light all the time, joy, yeah, woo ha. And here it seems as though at some point the structure of the separate self has to fall. Has to, sometimes it can be seen through, but it's a little bugger. It's fighting for its survival. And when that thing starts to be threatened, and anyone who's gone through anything that has shaken one's identity, like the loss of a partner or the loss of a job, a divorce, and like a life-threatening illness, things like this, a car accident, near-death experience kind of things, it whacks that structure, and then all manner of things rise to be met in that. So it's like a really awful embodiment boot camp. Yeah, but the wisdom of it, the wisdom that flows from the site there, is deeply applicable to anything about being a human being. What's learned in being pressed and having the back of the separate self broken, and what liberates there lets you see into things that we don't normally see into, because we're protecting ourselves in a way. Yeah. So there's my biography.
So can you give us an example of something that can be seen through that prior to that it just wasn't available?
Well, I love, what's her name? Bernadette Roberts. She's written No Self and a bunch of books, a lay Catholic who basically used Catholicism to go all the way to no self. And I think she used Catholicism like no one else ever has, honestly. But one of the things she said is that you don't know something is living you or living in you until it falls away. So if someone had said to me, and someone did say this to me actually in the middle of the dark night, I was acquainted with, I hope I'm gonna remember his name. I was acquainted with a spiritual teacher in Boulder. I was living in Colorado at the time. No, I was living in Taos at the time, New Mexico. And he said, sounds like you're having a love affair with your mind. And I was like, what does he even mean? Like, I'm just a person and I have a mind. I don't even know what he means. I don't know what he means. And when I was living from my, no, not Angelo, I may or may not, Stephen Harrison. Yeah. I didn't know as a person like all the other people. I didn't know the extent to which I was living from this central manager identity, everyday mind, that I didn't know that was kind of a prophylactic between me and life. I thought I was pretty darn surrendered and groovy and full of love and la la la. But compared to what it's like now versus pre-Dark Night, it's a completely different way of being here. And so I can see, you know how if you ever I'm gonna open this window here just a sec. So when the messages come through, I have a very etch-a-sketch mind. Here one moment, then it goes. I can see when people are in love with their minds because I'm no longer in love with my mind. I mean, my mind is nice and all that, but have you ever been, I can remember when I got Rolfed in Boulder. It was some big thing. Everybody was getting Rolfed. And after you got Rolfed, you could look around and see everybody who needed to be Rolfed.
Because they were kind of, yeah.
It's kind of like that.
It's a little bit.
Yeah. So there's a deep seeing of, in the absence of meanness, there's a deep seeing of meanness. And that is a very handy thing when you're trying to assist someone to minimize their suffering and to be with them, to see the patterns of meanness that I couldn't see when I was running the unconscious patterns of meanness, things like this. And it's a lot to be, as anyone knows who is seeing things that other people aren't seeing in a room. It's a lot. It can be a lot. Yeah. I can tell sometimes at 100 yards that somebody was beaten by their parent. I get groks of psyches, which is super useful in serving hearts.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Very, very clear. It's so clear. I have no questions. I just want to invite everyone. If you have a question, please put your electronic hand up because I will never notice you the way this is set up here. And then Shauna will help me if there's a hand up, or Audrey, whoever's.
I'm looking at some of the chats too, just in case there's some.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm not taking that in. Is there something I should look at too?
I don't think so. I'm not seeing a particular question in there. So
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So well, it occurs to me to ask what feels like the obvious question. What is the best thing we can do for ourselves when we are captured by the central manager, which is filtering out, kind of unfiltered reality, and it has us caught. We can even catch, we can tell something's going on. Well, I mean, just personally, I can tell when the filter's on. Like I can, I don't feel open. I don't feel at peace. And there's so much times when I do that, I absolutely cannot miss it when that's happening. And yet,
that's the wonderful thing about suffering. It's a wonderful thing about suffering is that it points to where often unconsciously we are disconnected from what and who we are. We're disconnected from reality. We're in some kind of what I would call ferret reality. We're in some kind of, creaturely, and this is not a diss to us. We have bodies that are creatures. And when conditioning is touched in our bodies and fear rises, we shrink our view. We get protective. We get defensive. It's so human. It's so common. It's so, like mercy to all of us. Guess what? This is what human beings came to earth for, to, have the angel and the creature sharing real estate called the body. It's like, And yeah, I could go on, but yeah. So what's the best thing to do when we're in the grip, right? So my experience of grips, my experience of that whole thing is that the body is in distress. The creature is in distress. And we are taught to apply our mind to these things because we live in a culture that really values thinking and logic and yang and doesn't so much value feeling, yin, softening. And we don't like to feel like we are mastered. We like to feel like we can master things. And so we'll take our mind and we'll try to master that thing. But for anybody who's ever tried to lick an addiction or unwind reactivity, the mind just doesn't take us there. Take us there for a moment. We can remind ourselves, really, all is well. I'm a holy being. Yeah. And still we're like, I think we had a dose of this, many of us, around the election. Like many people would have liked to have had a different set of feelings than they had election night, etc. So the first thing I do, I drop out of the mind because the mind exacerbates suffering. And I drop my attention into my felt experience, into the creature of the body. And the whole field of trauma resolution is super useful in here. How do you soothe a distressed creature? It doesn't matter what the subject matter is. And this is one of the things that dropping out of the mind helps us do. We drop out of the thing we think it's about. Because one of the things that's seen when you're emptied out, as we were talking about before, the things we can see, is how convinced we are that that thing is what is messing with me. That person's scary. That situation is flummoxing. But it's our undigested stuff in ourselves rising because it's been evoked by that. So I like to say, that person's not scary. I'm scared. That situation is not doomy. I'm meeting doom inside. This is pretty radical to say, but when the meanness, for lack of a better word, drops away, presence has no argument with anything. Now, it's not going to call a punch the same as a kiss, right? It's not that we lack discernment, but that there's a deep capacity to be with whatever is presented. So to drop out of the mind's craziness, projections, figuring out, trying to master, running on the fuel of fear, to drop down and soothe the creature of the body. Remember this one time I had something going on with one of my sweethearts. This was early in my investigation of my little theories here. And I was in bed and my mind was going, I'm not bad, you are. I didn't do that. You did that. You did, one of those things you can't stop chewing on because, somebody thinks you're a poop and you're mad and you can't worm out of it. So you go, woo. So I decided to test this and I dropped my attention out of the saga, the story, the whole rant, down into the body, and I let the body do what it felt like doing. And it like stretched around, made some sounds, did a little crying, did whatever it did. And then my attention went back to the flummoxing situation and it had disappeared because I had digested the feels under there. Now, that doesn't work like this all the time because we have really deeply entrenched things to meet in there. But that's what I do. That's my whole thing. And if we drop out of the everyday mind into our felt experience and soothe the animal of the body, give it what it needs, let it have expression, whatever, sometimes if we carry trauma, that can be overwhelming. And that's not a great thing to do, except very easily, because we can get caught into a trauma loop. And this is the wisdom of trauma resolution. And I tell you what, I refer people in droves to trauma resolution because trauma has been the reason why so many people feel like spiritual failures when they meditate and they get filled with, nobody was talking about trauma a decade ago. Now we're getting super savvy that spiritual practice, sometimes if one carries certain kinds of trauma, can dump us right off in there. So that's another area I think is really important. If we want to live love, we have to resolve what our bodies carry. It's part of it. It's the embodiment part. And sometimes a big awakening, a big spanking open, can take out whole sections of meanness. So where there was reactivity, there is no longer. But it doesn't, Adyashanti, who is my main teacher, he would say things like, you can either clean it up before awakening or you can clean it up after awakening, but you're going to be cleaning it up. And we don't like to hear that because we'd really love 3 steps to enlightenment. I had the experience, now I'm like Ramana, but fully embodying and growing up and growing all our capacities to be a love monster here. It takes some deep commitment and some deep self-honesty, because the mother of Grendel lives in our unconscious. Our friends all know where we're Grendel-y. Anyone who's ever had to live with us, or been in relationship with us. Yeah. So that's a little bit. Oh, I just heard a pop. Was that a question?
It is.
Oh.
Tina?
Are you ready? I'm so sorry. But I'm going to bring this up. So I talked about it a little bit earlier with Anne. So there's a pattern that I see that, thank God, there's sight there. And there's this victim pattern. And even though there's awareness of it, I saw it. It happened again today. The same situation, blah, 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 stories happening. And even though I saw it and I was like, I don't want to, I'm going to cry. I don't want to think this way
Oh,
anymore.
do cry.
I
Oh,
want to
do
break
cry.
this, blah, blah, blah. It's just still sitting on, all my stuff goes to this spot. Like I'm a robot in the back of my head. But I just am like, and I was like, okay, body, just feel this. And then after I got off and even talked with it, it's like, it's still there. Like this feeling that I'm like, why do I just keep repeating this? Feeling like I am always shit out of luck when it comes to love and support when I really need it. Like when I don't need it, it's everywhere. But when I need it, I'm like, there is this belief that it's stuck in there that it's like you're alone. And now I'm thinking the reason I continue to have issues every time I need someone, it's because I have that belief and there's a loop happening, I guess, like stuck in that. I want out. And I'm a doer. Can you tell? I'm like, give me 1, 2, 3. I will do it right now. Because I am sick of that particular one. That's all I have.
Yeah, I'm trying to get your picture up so I can see you here.
Oh,
Shauna just put all 3 across. Can you see all 3 of us? Or you just want Tina?
Oh, no, let me stretch it and then I'll see.
I'm at.
Oh, there we go. Wait. Oh, I can't move her. I see.
You want to see me? I'm in my
There you
messy
are.
studio.
I want to see you. So first off, first order of business, right? Here's, we are all, as human beings, at the mercy of life, at the mercy of the holy. I mean, we have some power, right? But if the holy wants to snuff us out, boof, right?
Like that.
One of the hugest things that was driven home to me in the dark night was that I am at the mercy of the holy. I'm not the boss. I was so pissed. What do you mean I'm not the boss? I mean, I've run my life until now. Like, what the hell? I get the good stuff. I'm a smart kid. Come on, give it to me. Right? Meanwhile, the holy's holding me under its thumb, just like you're talking about, under the thumb, right? So the first feel in there that we don't want to feel. This is like, and good Americans never want to feel this because, like, we have a right to pursue happiness, right? We should be the agents of our liberation. But in this place, helplessness. Just start there. I know. Do that some more. not. There's layers and layers, and the top layer is helpless. We hate to feel helpless. And that's a place to plumb the depths of. Because we believe we can't, helpless means bad. Helpless means abandoned. Helpless means no hope. Helpless means all these things. But all it means is right now, I'm bested. And I want to hang out with you and bested. Right now, I'm bested. And let yourself, do you know what I mean by bested? God 100, me 0.
Oh yeah, I'm bested then.
And just let yourself hang out there like this pattern exists. You're, God 100, you 0, and just let yourself hang in being, even though that's true. Just hang here with me. It's almost like sitting as a failure.
Mm.
Doesn't mean you're bad. Don't need to throw yourself down the cellar steps. Human, mercy, and so far, this one's flummoxed you. Just to let yourself kind of let that be your experience and be with it without solving it. And let yourself have breath and ground and your cozy chair. And in here, the harpies may play in your mind, like, oh, you're so lonely. In the fairy tales, they say, okay, if you're going in the woods where the harpies are, don't listen to the content of what they say. It'll get you. Talk to the hand harpies, because none of that is true. The only thing that's true about you right here is that you're a human being. That's it. You're a human. Humans can be conditioned into loops like this. Just because you have this particular loop doesn't mean you suck and you need to throw yourself down the cellar stairs. Just means, like me, like all of us, human. That's the first layer. God wins. Doesn't mean I'm bad. Human. What are you noticing? And
I see the word surrender.
yeah.
I visualize a white flag, like totally surrender.
Exactly. Exactly.
I keep thinking, I don't know why I keep having this expectation through this whole thing, that not with you, but that once I accept or surrender, that I'm not to feel that way anymore. And that's not the case. I mean, there's wisdom that goes, that's not it. But I really want that.
Of course you do. You want this thing to go away, right?
Yeah.
You want this thing to go away. And I want to point out that if you drop into your body in the place in here where you're reactive, where you're heartbroken, right? There's a heartbroken one in here. Like maybe even a little one, heartbroken one. Forlorn and where's all my buddies and wham, right? And we don't want her to go away.
Hmm.
She gets to be here, as sad as she is, as heartbroken as she is, because she experienced some things that were real and they really were heartbreaking. So heartbreaking that she still hasn't cried to the bottom of them. She's like, yo, remember me? I'm still heartbroken. And her heart probably broke at an age where she thought it was her fault, whatever happened. That she wasn't this enough or that enough or the other enough. It had nothing to do with her. Yeah, just let that rip if you feel to. Not your fault. not your failing. And one of the lucky things for me when I was in my 20s is I discovered weeping and its power. And if you are a weeper, if you can weep, let it rip. It's not unspiritual. Mirabai says midnight tears will bring you to God. To me, it's like structures falling. And heartbreak is at the heart of being human. So every time you glitch in this place, it's a golden invitation into becoming friends with helpless, becoming friends with heartbreak for as long as it takes, because that girl wants you to take her hand, not kick her to the curb. And holding her hand, you can just imagine or feel you guys are held in a field of presence. The earth is below you. The trees are all around. Your heartbreak belongs. And these places in us, man, they are persistent. They're like, we're not moving on until this is reckoned with. Excuse me, but have we loved this part of reality? Ooh, not quite yet. I guess we got to stay here for a while and figure out how.
Yeah. I'll have to call you later. And my mind is like, I am always here. I mean, I'm just meeting you, but my God, I'm 53 years old. I've been dealing with this child thing for ever.
Yeah, no fair.
And I feel bad. I mean, I'm like, when is it gonna end?
Not,
Okay.
not yet. Something was devastating.
Lots was devastating, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah.
But well, there again, that's like self-pity. I'm like, it's not, I don't want to. I try really hard to heal her. I've been through this for years, and here I am still. Feels very hopeless
Yeah. Yeah. I get it.
sometimes. Sorry, guys. They've all heard this shit from me. God knows how many times.
Ah.
So,
As far as I'm concerned, we are privileged that the space is safe enough for this one to show up. Because back then it was hopeless, right? You tried everything, whatever that was. The wallpaper from that moment, it comes screaming in. I think so many of us have a place like this, and we don't share it, and we think we're the only one. We think everybody else, they're all lit, they're all awake. What about me? And everybody's buttoning their lips in satsang about what's really tanning their hide. Human.
yeah. Thank you. I know this. I know it hits my have a giant thing that's and this giant little thing in there that says, "You are always alone, and you have to handle life and be strong because you're just alone." And
Yeah.
it's not true, but that's a
It was drilled into you early. There was some experience, this life or another, where you were alone,
oh yeah.
and it's frozen in there. Let me ask you, can you tell right this very minute that you're not alone?
Yeah. I don't feel alone in awakening together. I love these current ladies. No, I'm not alone here.
Yeah. let yourself, almost like a little pig in mud, let yourself roll around in the company here. It's medicine. And let those tears keep flowing. I would invite you to have this as a regular thing when you're in this group or anywhere else where there's really good, sweet company. Let yourself eat it. Notice it.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is your independent study. This is what you came to Earth to do. We think life is when we get over these things. This is actually like us being schooled in something by virtue of what's in our psyche.
So my go-to is humor, so I have to end with this. Ready?
Okay. Yes.
So I told myself earlier today, I said, motherfucker, excuse my language. I said, motherfucker, in the mirror. I said, did you actually? I heard that I chose this life. Someone said there was a teacher going, an angel teacher going, hey, someone want to go down and get abused and beat up and abandoned by their mom and
Oh,
left as a homeless kid. And you said, ooh, I did. I said, so I looked in the mirror. I said, motherfucker, did you do that to me? Bitch, did you put me through this shit? You chose this shit.
so
This is my only way out.
that's awesome. You know, once I saw a woman who had been in Iraq, and she wasn't a soldier. She was there doing some other thing, and their Jeep got blown up and by some mine or something or other. And she spent some time dead, and then she came back. And in this dead time, and I wish I could find this video, it was so fascinating. She said she hung out with her like soul team, and they were yucking it up. Like, how shall we do this? Should we have her? Does she come back or not come back? Does she have both her legs when she comes back? She's telling this. I'm like, one of the things my daughter said when she was little, she was in pretty good shape. She came home from kindergarten and she said, Mama, I want to play starving mice in the desert. And Maggie keeps taking out a magic wand and making food. And I want to play starving mice in the desert. And I have a feeling some of us might have come to this earth saying, I want to play starving mice in the desert. And then we forgot. It's too weird how we all have these very unique independent studies and how when we go to the bottom of them, whether this life or another one, I have a feeling I've been at this a few lives, we become geniuses in the very place where our legs were broken. It's called wounded healer, because that was the place our intelligence kept going, kept going. How do I heal this? How do I free myself? It's a completely different take on our suffering, than we normally think of. But what kind of soul would come here and do that? Starving mice in the desert version, madam.
No, I'll be having a conversation with the soul team after.
Love to you, dear. Thank you for your courage and your vulnerability to share here. Yeehaw.
She's gonna book some time with her soul team. Okay, so I have heard you say a number of times you did more weeping than sitting. So we just talked ever so briefly about me losing my mom recently, and I cried, which was so great because I lost my dad, super close to my mom and my dad. Couldn't cry. I was there when he died. It was, how it is, like peaceful but sad, horrible but lovely and miraculous, and nothing. And then mom died, and I cried. And God, dag, I thought, I know what you guys talk about now. It's so good. It's
Isn't
like,
it
holy
good?
shit. It's like,
so
something's
good.
coming out. It lasts maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 minutes, sometimes 2, 3, sometimes 7, never 45, never. It feels so much better. Well, so I woke up that early morning after the election. I got the result, and I felt this, and nothing. So I haven't cried. I'm willing to cry. But something is like, I can feel it. Like, we're not crying. So
We're not crying. Is that what you said? We're not crying.
Well, no, I mean, I can just feel that. We ain't fucking crying here. I can just feel that. Look, we can do a lot of things. We ain't crying. We're gonna keep our schedule. We're gonna meditate. We're gonna be with it. We're gonna journal. We ain't fucking crying. I can hear that. I can feel it. I can just fucking feel it. Anyway, so
Yeah.
so I've been sitting with. So I'm like, what is at the bottom of this? Like, and so you said helpless. We just did a retreat a little bit ago. One of the days was helpless. So I had looked at helpless and I went, what is on? Ooh, powerlessness. Ooh, I feel utterly powerless, which, is kind of a take your breath away kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I've been sitting with feeling just utterly, I do feel utterly powerless. It's not hard to, I mean, it's actually not hard to sit with it because it's just, once I got to that word, it was like, that is what it is. And yet I can tell, I don't know what I can tell. There's no crying. My sense is it would feel fucking awesome to cry.
Yeah.
And something is just willing to be with powerless, willing to feel it. And yet there's some kind of, my sense is there's some kind of functional freeze going on. But
well, let me just say, so much of our psychological patterning and conditioning is unconscious. We can't even see all of what we're up to. And the systematic discouragement of softness, openness, vulnerability in this culture is stunning. This is another thing that I can see kind of post whatever. I work with men. I do an annual men's retreat every year. And men get the brunt, like men's conditioning is the brunt of anti-yin, do not soften, do not feel, do not admit vulnerability. You got to master it on the basis of being a man. And then many of us, I can recognize in you kind of a sister tomboy in a way. And I was conditioned as what they called a tomboy back then. I'm 62, so this is in the 60s, right? And I played sports, girls didn't yet, when I was little and whatever. And I was like, I will be hogtied and whipped before I'm one of those wussy things, those powerless things, those things that they call women. I don't want to be that thing, because I could feel in my culture the sexism and I could feel the gender conditioning. And at that time it was, I don't want any of those yin qualities. Those are the qualities that get ridiculed, that get bested, that get you teased, that get you hurt, that get you. And when I'm busily trying to prove that I'm a good one, I'm trying to be a good little man inside of men's conditioning, because it spreads to us as well. And what I notice in working with men, because men get the capacity to cry kind of not across the board, right? There's families are different, et cetera, but crying is not something men are supposed to do. And a lot of those guys have so many defenses, and they come into our safe space in the men's retreat. This men's retreat we had, within the first session, a guy was sobbing on the floor for 45 minutes. When we feel seen, understood, held, protected, like someone has our back, then we can soften, open. But until we feel that level of protection, we are doing the protection ourselves. We are doing the, I'm fine, whatever. And we have to, there's a lot of shame around being that vulnerable and open often. And so we have to know that we are not being seen as broken. We're not being seen as less than. We're not being seen as suddenly, because you're crying, you lose your citizenship or your, respectability and all this kind of thing. But it's really, when I first encountered things like therapy and whatever, I couldn't cry. I didn't cry. The only time I cried was when I was drunk, and I was rarely drunk, so I rarely cried, right? Because then the inhibitions were down. I just didn't. I was too afraid. I was too feeling unsafe. It took a number of years before I felt enough of the fear to come off, enough of the vigilance and the protection, and I'm a man and I can handle it myself, thank you very much, before I could really lean into someone like that. Crying is yin. Yin falls open when it feels safe. And crying is super good for us. It's good for us spiritually, psychologically, physically. We are all holding so much in our bodies. We're tired, we're heartbroken. I mean, and we're numbing a lot of it out, because if we did really look around the earth and see all that's being harshed and hurt and lost, you know, weep me, like, what is it? Cry me a river, you know? Weeping is really just brilliant. And Nanda Ma is another one that was really a proponent of tears. It's like wash those structures to the sea, you know, sink down into life. All that holding is holding us up instead of, yeah. And, you know, the guys talk about like what they do. They watch movies that make them cry. They find the movies that'll like crack them open a little bit, and then they watch those, you know. And finding a place where you feel safe. I mean, where you really feel seen and someone's really seeing your heart, seeing you as a softie, because we all are softies. It turns out this yin aspect, the softy aspect, this is the heart. This is the tender heart that Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche talks about. The warrior heart, in its essence, is a tender heart. This is how we open to our humanness, how we land here, and how our yang, when it moves, is trustworthy because it has its roots in the tender heart rather than in a defense against the tender heart. Yeah. I once had a guy come to a retreat. He's like, he's yelling at me from the back. Zandi, you're not going to make me cry. You're not going to make me cry. Hours later, he was crying. I didn't make him. We want to when we feel safe. We want to let it all down. We want to lean into another human. We're fingers on a hand. We belong to each other. Okay, I'll be quiet now. Your turn.
Oh, no. I'm happy to have you. What I hear you saying is just, I mean, my translation is just be patient and just kind of, that's what I hear. How tender and soft can I be, knowing that this creature has got some defenses up that I don't yet have the unlock key to disarm. I don't know how to put the shields down.
Yeah. And that's what the use of a good space holder is. And I feel like that's another part of our conditioning, that we shouldn't need help. John Wayne spirituality, we should be able to do it ourselves. Ramana did. He laid down on the ground and said, I'm ready to die. How come it's not working for me? I have a feeling Ramana was ready to pop, okay? But we borrow each other. We borrow, for example, where we don't know how to love this. We don't know how. It's like being in a space with someone who sees us clearly, sees us with tenderness, you know, can see the things we can't see. Or when we feel unsafe, someone else who can help us feel safe. It's like this whole yang poisoning that our culture has that demonizes all these things, like relying and leaning into each other. Like, duh. And I think we have internalized this kind of hatred of yin, derision of yin, mistrust of yin, not going to yin so deeply we don't even know we're doing it. We are culture-wide blind. And it's why our planet looks the way it looks. You know, can we just soften a little, everybody? Weep a little and be a bit more human as a result of it. And as you noticed when you did your cry and it felt good, it's like, oh, it
Oh,
softens the body. Ooh,
amazing. It was like tonic. It was like a bomb. It was
yeah.
amazing. It was amazing. I felt like 100% different person afterwards. Yeah.
Yeah. I got to say, the light that is screaming through my body all the time, just emanating through my body all the time, that's pretty good, but I really miss crying. When I hurt myself, I cry and I love it. It's yummy. It's so yummy.
Mm.
My daughter was little. I said, Soph, what's one thing you teach all the adults? And she said, it's okay to cry. Yeah. So we come into the world with that really one of our go-tos. It's such a beautiful way to release the stress in our bodies, to digest overwhelming experience. Our whole me structure is a defense. It's a defense against that, against being hurt. It's a superpower to be able to really experience hurt and move through. Yeah. So you might need to go to the island where the wild things are and trials.
Sounds good to me. So let me, you mentioned that you cry when you get hurt, like a physical, like a biological pain,
Oh,
right?
physical thing, yeah.
Physical thing. So tell me, so you mentioned Bernadette Roberts, and I'm familiar, but some people here have really studied her a lot. So do you feel comfortable talking about, her, what, and I get mixed up, it's no self, right? Is that what she calls the capital S self is no self?
Yeah, yeah. And Bernadette Roberts, one of the very cool things about Bernadette Roberts, I feel is very cool. And I did get to meet her once, and she has the bedside manner of a beast. I mean, she just like, if you ask her a question, often you end up feeling so stupid for having asked it, you might not ask another one. She's just really not gentle. But she was so true to her experience
Mm,
as she went through all these various things. To me, it's a big loss that she didn't write about her dark night of the soul.
mm.
She refers to it, but she talks quite a lot about what happens after it. But she didn't really chronicle her dark night of the soul that I saw. Yeah. So, what's your question?
Well, but okay, so do you remember that part where she was driving up the hill to that retreat center and her mind was going crazy? I mean, I do remember that story. I don't know if you remember that story, but
Just a little bit. I don't have a really great memory bank.
yeah, but I mean, I agree. But I, like I said, I haven't studied her as much. So as other in this room. Um, so my question is, uh, do you know from direct experience of what she speaks?
Yes. Yes. And she said, good thing I have some conditioning. Good thing my body just knows how to get up and brush its teeth and go to the thing because it's the only thing holding this together right now.
Mm,
It's like, so the feeling or the experience of it's almost like living without an owner, living
mm,
without an author. Like, uh, many of us have had the experience of we're gonna go drive to school, or we're gonna go drive to a friend's house, but instead we end up driving to school or to work. We end up driving somewhere familiar. We were a little unconscious, and the conditioning just took us there, right? Increasingly, there's this sense when the meanness drops of life is just living itself. Look what we're doing now. Someone just said this to me yesterday. They were like, is this normal? I mean, look, I'm doing this thing. I wasn't the author of it. Like I'm playing the guitar and singing on stage right now. I would have never dreamed in this lifetime. I had a fear of singing. It was convinced I couldn't sing, blah, blah, blah. Life just moved me into that. There's a feeling of life is moving. I am not.
So the self-referencing mechanism just is broken.
It just, it died. It's like, when like, and often we can feel this after awakening, we can feel a selfing, a meing,
Mhm.
it rises and we can feel it. It's like, I liken it to a factory with a machine, and the belt is broken in the machine. It no longer makes widgets, but it's still spinning, and the belt is flapping, but it no longer has any use. We've seen through it, but still the impulse rises to get it up, to be a person, to use your will, this kind of thing. And that thing can utterly relax, especially if in the dark night it's so frequently assaulted. It's like every time meanness happens, radical suffering happens. You start going, okay, okay. Still unconsciously, it rises. Yeah. It's like living without a script, living without a plan, living without a rehearsal. Just like, okay, innocent, wide open, nobodiness being lived.
And does that extend to your role as mom with your daughter?
Yes.
Mm.
I love what Byron Katie says. She says, I'm not a mom until my daughter needs me to be mom. And then I'm a mom for as long as she needs to be a mom. And then I'm back resting as nothing and nobody. And she's probably nothing and nobody as she's momming. But it's like a function. It's no longer your person. It's a function. Like I have a function called teacher. And when I'm in the appropriate setting, I am functioning. I'm a function. That's all I am. I'm a function. I'm a teacher function. And when that's over, I'm not on the subway teaching. I'm not in the coffee shop teaching. I'm just a space until something rises, an impulse rises, or a task rises, or a neighbor comes. Then I am a neighbor. But no centralized meanness that is referred back to and, upkept.
Mm-hmm.
And thank God for conditioning. I mean, I leave my house with my clothes on. Thank God. Some conditioning is really good. It's great to be able to, know the rules of basic politeness,
Mm.
basic civilized behavior so that I don't draw a whole lot of attention to myself. But some awakened beings have, Lala, the mystic Lala, she danced naked. There are people throughout time who've gone so off their rocker, and that's been their calling, is to just be weird as all get out. I have to say I am somewhat weird. I have a swing in backyard. My neighbors probably think I'm a loon. I'm like on my swing singing and, eating my yogurt. But the world has room for quirkiness, and we do become quite quirky often as we are our human true selves. We shed the things that weren't for us, and new things sprout, new capacities or habits or ways we have fun.
It feels like it just has the feeling of just liberation.
Yes, liberation, liberation, play. This is what ends up happening. Oh, can we call on Rhoda?
Here we go. Yes, Rhoda, absolutely.
Rhoda?
Yeah, apparently I right in. I don't know how that happened.
Hello.
Oh, you didn't mean to put your hand up?
No, I did mean to put my hand up, but it seems that Shauna put me in.
She's
Okay, she's got her hand up. Here you go. Thank you, Shauna.
Extra visible.
So when you spoke about the dark night of the soul, I just kind of got curious about the first thing that came in for me is like, is that different than shadow work? Or
I can speak to that if you want. I can speak to that if you want.
thank you.
I did a lot of shadow work pre Dark Night of the Soul. And what St. John of the Cross says about the Dark Night of the Soul is that it's not as a result of, like, a lot of books written about it are basically about a human hard time, like having cancer, losing your partner, or a bout with depression, or things like this. St. John says the cause of the Dark Night of the Soul is not a human hard time. And how he saw it, I can't say that I'm the same sort of mystic as him, is that it's like you've basically prayed for obliteration or union, however you want to see it. Union is the way to see it from kind of the positive. Obliteration is the way to see it from the negative. But basically, there's only one Ia left standing, and it's God. Right. Back to the, God, 100, Jeannie 0. And St. John of the Cross says that you have done all the work you can do with your will. You've gone to the workshops, you've prayed, you've done all your things, you've done all the things. And now the Holy says, okay, darling, leave the rest to me. Shines a light in the soul and sends the remaining division up into your face to be digested and metabolized. One of the things that happens is related to the shadow. You feel like the crap on the bottom of God's boot. Like in the Dark Night of the Soul, you are meeting your shadow so deeply, you are it. Aspects of your shadow you never knew existed. You know that feeling when you're like fighting with somebody in a way and you're like playing badness hot potato? It's like, I'm not bad, you were. I'm not bad, you were. I didn't do it, it was you. That kind of thing. That thing we're protecting, we might call shame, that's attached to things like, if I'm stupid, I'm bad. If I'm fat, I'm bad. If I'm not perfect, I'm bad. That bad, that's the essence of curse. That's at the bottom of separation. And the Dark Night of the Soul, the roots of that, at least this is my experience, were flushed out of the underbrush up to be met. So in a way, it's shadow work on steroids. It's not voluntary. And one of the things St. John says about the Dark Night of the Soul is it's a passive passage. You basically are on God's operating table getting shit done to you, and all you got to do is live through it, which is really different than my early work, which was like, let me get a therapist, let me go after my shadow, let me reclaim my animus, let me do all this work. I felt like I was the captain of it. I was doing that. This thing is of a different order altogether. Like if I hadn't lived through it, I would not have believed one could live through something like that and not have had a mental illness. I felt like, whoa, this is of a whole different, the whole world looked meaningless. It was intense. I was like in Hades. I remember a little funny story. I was in a class at the time at UNM, a sacred poetry class. There were a few of us in there, including Mirabai Starr, who translated The Dark Night of the Soul, a contemporary translation. And there were three of us, a woman who'd gone through a really painful divorce, a woman who had a life-threatening illness, I think she had breast cancer, and me, and I was right in the dark night. And then this young man who was taking this sacred poetry class as this kind of a, like basket weaving, like I'll just get a credit doing this. And we had an article by Mircea Eliade about Hades, about going to hell in Hades. And the whole article was just painting the picture of this dark night experience. And the kid he goes, like there's a place called the underworld. And these three like toothless hags, us, we all turned and looked at him, and he was like, and he dropped the class. It's like, yes, there is. It's not a physical place, but it certainly exists. So you have to do what we would call shadow work during it. It's kind of like you have to, or you're just going to blow your brains out, like metabolize some of this stuff. And the work we do to meet our shadow up until that point is not wasted. I think that all the work I did up until that point had me having enough faith in the process of going down that I could live through it. I think there are probably people who off themselves in the dark night of the soul. It is unbelievable. Yeah.
And I would have, what you're describing sounds to me like really deep, dark depression, but I don't know that there was any conscious approach to that. But maybe it's different. I mean,
it's slightly different because people would ask me, "You're depressed?" And it wasn't a depression. It was like an active crucifixion. It was like an agony, but there was no cause. And the agony was actually being, it's funny to say this, but having the honor of getting to be let into the deep rooms where separation lives. You know, when we look out at the world and we see the worst things that we can imagine, some of those things are being enacted in our psyches below our awareness. And that's how they outpicture into the world. Carl Jung was a big proponent of this. Like, hey, humanity, do your deep shadow work or you're going to destroy yourselves. You know, so it's very important work for all of us to be doing, however we do it. But it did have a different feel than depression. It was a very active, not a like, you know, it was like, yeah.
thank you. I
Thank
see
you.
someone else has their hand up, so I'm gonna let go.
Okay.
Thank you, Rhoda. Joseph.
So thank you, Anne.
Yes.
And
Joe.
thank you so much, Jeannie, for being with us and for sharing with us. And a question comes up as you're talking about the dark night. And earlier you mentioned the importance of leaning on others. Did you have a particular person that was helping guide you through this, or was it all internal guidance?
What a great question. So I had two best friends who I had done a lot of deep work with in co-counseling. One of them had already been doing that, and then we taught my best friend how to do it. And we would have frequent sessions with each other, which was just holding space for each person. And they admitted they didn't know what the hell I was going through and what the hell to do with me, but they knew enough to just be with me and let me feel the things I was feeling. So that saved my life, probably. I looked everywhere at the time, and I was a mom of a new young one, so I didn't have all this time to, you know, and the internet wasn't what it is now, right? You know, we didn't have AI, we didn't have Google, but I looked everywhere I could for anyone who was having or had had the experience I was having, because I went to therapists and I had more space than they did. I could have given them sessions. They wanted to help me, you know, whatever. And it was like, no, you don't get it. This is like, you know, who were my peers were like Vietnam vets, homeless people, like people who'd been right up against it and had a kind of a silence about them, a kind of a humility about them. They weren't trying to save me or give me their little program. Some of my best friends wanted me to go see a doctor, and I covered all the bases. I did go see a doctor. Is this, you know, postpartum depression, prepartum depression? What's happening? And the only people I found who could speak to it were ancient poets, Rilke, Rumi, what's his name? Oh, I can't think of his name. But when the Sufis talk about devastation, you know, they're in the neighborhood of this. Rilke, a champion, he's got a poem called The Man Watching. I had one friend for a short amount of time who had chronic fatigue. She was a therapist. We used to get together and read The Man Watching. We'd take turns reading The Man Watching and wailing. You know, that was I couldn't make a friend. Therapists weren't useful to me. I did find a few. Pamela Wilson was the first one to recognize what was going on with me. Adyashanti had his own version of it. He was tremendously helpful to me. But a lot of the best help was through the writing of people who were dead. I would see a shred here, a shred there. But, overall, it was those dear hearts who stayed by my side and spent time with me while I just wailed. My daughter's dad, very, he was in a state of endurance during this time because I didn't know what the heck was going on with me. Is it wrong that I'm with you? Is it wrong that I'm having a baby? Is it like, what is this? What is this? And I was no kind of wife. I was like, in Pee Wee Herman's Big Adventure, Large Marge picks him up, turns toward him and goes, "Blah," with her monster face. That's what I was. I was the bride with the monster face. It was horrible, poor guy. And he wasn't really able to hold space for me because he didn't get what was going on. But he was surely a good sport about staying with me and staying through, the whole thing and making room for me. He didn't just dump me when I wanted my own room. He didn't, he hung in there, which gave me a home, because the amount of homeless wretch that rose here, probably from other lives, who knows? It was really distressing. It was really, really something. And so to have a home to go to where I belonged, even though I didn't feel like I belonged on the earth at all during that time, that was really helpful. And, I wish I had me, honestly, someone who really, really had been down and back up.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. And one thing I want to share that I was so excited about today. I found out that, I live in Shawnee, Kansas. You're in Lawrence, right? We're
Yeah.
like 30 minutes from each other. And all this time I've been hearing your name and stuff. And then Shauna said, she lives in Lawrence, Kansas. It's like, really? So
That's
anyway,
amazing. That's
yeah.
amazing. And
Nice to meet you, neighbor.
I do nothing in person here. Nobody knows about me. I don't want them to know about me. I just get to be a dopey member of the community. But I do
Yeah.
an occasional retreat in an Airbnb here. So you're
Oh,
invited.
I'll look for that on your,
Yeah.
you'll
One coming
post on
up
the
in
website.
March. I don't know if we've posted it yet, but it'll be up there soon. That's awesome. You're my neighbor.
Excellent.
Yay.
Yeah.
Keep my
Thank you,
secret.
Jeannie.
Keep her secret.
It's right here. It's right here.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. And so, Jeannie, I see we're coming up. We're right in the last minute, believe it or not. Tell us what you just mentioned. You have retreats. Just give us a little sense of how people can get in touch with you or get with your program if that's what they feel
I'm
comfortable.
gonna just I made a little list of links before we got on, just in case somebody wanted to find me. So boop, whole bunch of links. I am a very active human being and I love to be with people. I love my students. And the way I work, it's like there's all these kind of levels of ways you can plug in. There's a YouTube channel. I gave you the link to the school, lots of recorded stuff. You never have to be with me live to benefit from me. We've got over 100 recorded classes and series and things there, and some of it's free, some of the short stuff. There's a little bit on my website too. There's like these little mini free teachings and links to that school there as well. So then I do a themed call once a month. I just did one on Eros. I think in December, the only one I have is a guided meditation on the solstice called Solstice Silence. Soothy, we call them guided meditations. A little kid called me the Soothy lady, so we say Soothies. I have a couple day longs, one about navigating gaslighting and trusting your truth uh, on the 23rd of this month. I have a day long on conscious, it's called Mindful Merriment, and it's a day on conscious holidays. So we're going to take a day to really feel into what's our plan for the holidays. If there's familial stuff or whatever, just look at some of the obstacles to just really celebrating in the way that feeds our hearts. And so I do regular things like that. I do regular series. Right now I have a series called Unwinding Reactivity. It's only taken one call has happened last Monday. It's on Mondays. And you can always join the series late. You can just watch the recordings and catch up to us. So you're welcome to that. And I don't know if I posted that. I posted a recording of a post-election guided meditation I did to just kind of like
That was wonderful.
fill their pill. I did a pre-election one too.
Yes, I listened to that one too.
Yeah. And then I posted a recording to a kind of a typical 2-hour meeting called Wisdom and Felt Sense that talks about that. I also, because I so deeply feel that this is an evolutionary process, and you guys have a little community here, which is so great, to have a held space where we return. And so I do all these committed programs. They start every September. They're 8 months long. I have 3 that run simultaneously. And then I have a shorter one that is kind of the prerequisite for the longer ones every spring and every late summer, called the Holy Work Challenge, which is basically working with this felt inquiry and assisting ourselves to kind of like sink down and open into this aspect outside the mind. So that's happening in March. And those all have an application just to make sure that people are, ready for this kind of thing, because it can be intense and stuff. And
Yes.
I'd like to learn about the people who are entering into that. So we have a community probably of mostly an online community at this point. Some of the people come to in-person things of about 80 people or so that are in those committed programs, and they do partner practice and stuff. And then I'm starting to do more in-person stuff. I'm going to be in the Bay Area in January. I have a retreat here, a 5-day retreat in March. I'm going to New England in June, to Massachusetts. And I do online retreats too. I have a New Year's retreat every year, 5-day retreat online. And that one's January 1st to 5th. So I do a lot. And I put my website there. You can find me. I do private sessions too. If you're shy and you don't want to be with a group, I do that. Yeah. So
Wow,
lots.
wonderful. Well, thank you. Thank you for taking us through that. Again, thank you for your heart. I feel like you just shared a big heart with us, and it's just received. It's received with so much gratitude.
How dear. Thank you. Thank you. You just called my true name, so thank you. And does anybody have that thing where you can go like this and it really?
There we go. Yep, we got it. We got it.
There's a thing on Zoom where I think if you have an iPad or something, you can go like this and all these hearts come up.
Oh, you mean it does it automatically? Oh, okay, yeah.
People with iPads, because I can't do that. But
Right.
Anyway, thank you, Anne, and thank you, everyone. What a sweetness to be with you all.
Thank you for watching our satsang. We hope you enjoyed it. If you would like to join us live, please remember you can do so by visiting our website at awakening-together.org. We'd love to see you in the sanctuary. Again, our website is awakening-together.org. Remember to click the bell for more notifications and subscribe.